Hi everyone. A little while ago we did a video about whether people should be afraid of AI tools, specifically AI artwork in relation to all the kind of stable diffusion stuff going on right now with Midjourney and Dolly and Imagine and all the different variations of those. In that video I tried to describe a concept which I've been thinking about which kind of helps me resolve this concern of AI, and it's kind of to like help resolve the idea of the AI tools with the idea of low effort. So obviously, for example, when you enter a text prompt, like a sentence into one of these tools to get a result back from it, you can get something that looks quite nice in a lot of situations, but it's a low effort because it didn't take much effort to get that nice result. Now, we talked about quite a lot of stuff in that video, but the main concept I wanted to get across was the story of creation, and it's basically what I think about whenever considering new tools which appear on the scene. So I figured I'd just do a quick single dedicated video just explaining that again, so I can easily link this to people if it ever comes up in conversation. So the story of creation is all about measuring the value of a piece of artwork, or rather the perceived value from the culture. So for example, I think the example I gave before was that if you draw a line on a page, like two people, if they both draw a line on a page, it's like an identical piece of artwork. It's really bad artwork because it's just a line on a page. But one can inherently have more value than the other if the story of its creation is more impressive, more authentic, representing more skill, more emotional experience, etc. So I think the example I gave was that if one person just for a laugh drew a line on a page, whereas compared to another person who their family has died or something and they decided that they're going to draw a line on a page, but to do this they're going to travel all around the world on foot, climbing over all of the largest mountains, etc., just for the sole purpose of coming back and drawing a line on a page. That one inherently has more value to it because there's a much more expansive story of creation behind it. Like there's a lot more that's gone into that process. So it's a basic idea of just how two things can be on first appearance the same, but on a more in-depth consideration one of them has more of a cultural value than the other. So story of creation is something I think about quite a lot, but there are other ways to measure value for artwork. For example, you've got like sentimental value, and that's not really like a culturally considered thing, it's more like an individual thing, obviously. So if you're growing up with like a certain toy, you don't want to get rid of it like later on in life because, oh, you've had so many memories attached to that while growing up. No, maybe even, for example, like one of your family members got it for you who's now passed away, etc. So it has a high sentimental value, and a lot of the time like currency type or values can't really be associated with things like that. So well, what does this have to do with AI artwork? So when I look at new tools appearing on the scene, I always think, okay, they can allow people to make some really cool things and they can assist with workflows, possibly removing some jobs from the market, sure, eventually in the future, but I don't think they're anything to be particularly worried about. The only thing I would consider is, do the results have any value? So obviously that's a discussion on, Twitter and stuff. I see a lot of professional artists getting a bit worked up and getting quite vocal about AI artworks. There does seem to be a lot of spite in the conversation. I don't think putting a text sentence into a AI tool and then getting a result back is high effort, so therefore I don't think it's high value. And it's not to say that effort necessarily correlates directly with value, it's all about the story. So one thing I tried to explain in the other video was that if you find a way to integrate the AI tool, or any tool for that matter, it doesn't have to be AI just fits into this category. If you find a way to integrate it creatively into a creation process for the artwork you're making, then I think that's perfectly fine. You can use it as an inspiration tool, as an assistance tool, or as like a cleanup tool, like anything like that. And it makes no difference what the tool does. That's what I like about this concept. Like, I think AI has a certain stigma around it, in the same way that all other emerging technologies have certain stigmas around them as well. For example, NFTs. But NFTs were like a unnecessary solution to a non-existent problem, but AI is actually a solution to certain problems in many applications. Oh yeah, that's another way of measuring the value as well. So we've talked about the story of creation and sentimental value, but there's also like historical value. And it's interesting kind of like when you think about combining these. So for example, Michelangelo's David, the famous, super famous marble Renaissance sculpture, why is this more valuable than any other statue made nowadays? Because like a lot of statues nowadays have like the same degree of quality, or possibly even more quality, and they're made using like modern manufacturing processes, so, and they might last longer. Okay, the obvious point is that making something using a manufacturing process nowadays is nowhere near as authentic or as impressive or as like emotional, I suppose, as making something by hand, which is why things made by hand have a higher value to them. And we already understand this. this. It's the same. It's the difference between getting food from McDonald's versus a Michelin star restaurant. Like, this is known. This is not like a complicated thing. Everyone already acknowledges these things. Things which are made in a more authentic way have a higher value because we crave authenticity. And I think, possibly maybe a controversial opinion, that a certain number of artists online are forgetting that because they're afraid of these new tools. I'm not going to name any names, but people are getting quite vocal about it. I don't think there's anything to be afraid of. I don't think people are going to stop craving authenticity in any space. Sure, now there are tangential conversations which can be had like on the more legal side of things, like copyright issues, etc. And I don't really know how you would police those properly in these data sets used by the AIs. So that's a conversation for people who know a lot more about the system than me to discuss. But I believe in the value of authenticity, and I don't think that just because there's more of something, it means that the interest in authenticity is going to go down. Like, I always believe in like the pie grows every day kind of philosophy, where if you feel like you're competing with other people, it's a kind of bad mindset to have because there's just more of everything every day. Like, more people are being born every day, therefore the audiences for like most kind of modern markets are kind of growing every day, except for, there's a lot of exceptions depending on what's going on with things becoming redundant or interests changing, trends, etc. But everything is growing so quickly. The number of artists appearing on the scene is growing at an incredible pace. And sure, maybe this dilutes the water a bit because certain artists may find it harder to be seen by people or to get jobs, because I know that a lot of the kind of digital jobs nowadays are receiving so many applications, and it's becoming so impersonal now because companies aren't giving any advice back on the portfolios or the resumes that they're reviewing. And in a lot of cases, they're just, not giving any responses whatsoever. So, in regards to things like that, yes, there are all sorts of other tangential conversations again to have about like, the changing society. But I don't think authenticity is going away. And I think that what's probably going to happen is that entertainment is probably going to be touched by the AI and machine learning space. So things will be created which are curtailed to an individual's interests. So for example, I know a lot of people, myself included, we tend to listen to certain types of music when we're doing work. There are certain categories of the music, like ambience with subtle melodies, which are a bit kind of asymmetrical, like that it's not always the same all the way through, even adding in some background noise. So more specifically, I've been listening to like Mirror's Edge ambient soundtracks where people have left in some of the city sounds and stuff like that. But the thing is, like, as we're discovering new sources of like ambient music, for example, we're kind of finding the ones which we resonate best with in terms of like a productivity level. But who's to say that an AI couldn't help us do that anyway? Or then AI wouldn't be able to listen to all these things and then generate us the perfect soundtrack. And not even like it's a finite thing. Perhaps, in the future, if it's kind of paying attention to how you're responding to things, it can generate a continuous optimized kind of musical flow, if that makes sense. Something which can affect your emotions and kind of resonate with who you are. So I feel like the AI space will probably end up merging with the entertainment space, and who's to say that won't expand to like, more kind of visual formats as well. But again, even then, I don't think that it's going to eliminate the authentic music producers, for example, or in this case, ambient soundtrack producers and people like that. But it's extremely difficult to predict. Like, one thing you always need to keep in mind is that the medium is going to change. We're used to looking at things on a screen and listening to things through like headphones and earphones, etc. But who's to say that any of that will be the same in like 100 years? Also, jobs have changed all the way throughout human history. So I think it's weird that people spend so much effort complaining about jobs, needing to stay the same. I don't think jobs should stay the same. I think they should change and adapt with the times, and that new jobs should be created around new emerging technologies. Sure, they may take a more managerial position, but I consider that a form of luxury. For example, like, pre-industrial eras, there would be a lot more manual labor involved in things. And sure, actually during the industrial transition, there's still a lot of manual labor, possibly even more. But the whole purpose of developing these technologies is to automate processes so you can do more within a shorter amount of time and hopefully to a higher quality. And if you design the technology in the right way, it doesn't have to have much manual involvement. So I think we should be developing technologies to help people take a managerial position around it and turn those into jobs. Now, obviously that means that there may not be as many jobs available, but that's why I think expansion is important, but not on Earth. I bet you didn't think we'd get here. Yes, I do think we should be leaving the planet. I think we should move all of our factory work off-world. And considering that the amount of space in the universe is virtually limitless as far as we're concerned, we could definitely expand the amount of kind of manufacturing processes going on, and consequently the number of managerial jobs around those, without necessarily having to think about the amount of space being restricted and having to prioritize certain people over others and having privilege, etc., blah, blah, blah. But, all of that is just a whole other conversation. Basically, the whole point of this video is I'm not particularly worried because I don't don't think authenticity is going away. I think the interest will always exist for kind of like fast results and for longer term, more handcrafted results. Even just for like, at the end of the day, even just for novelty reasons, I don't think novelty is going away. So one of my favorite sci-fi authors is Ian Banks, who's now passed away, sadly. But I read one of his books in his sci-fi series based around the culture. It's like a certain race of people that's a combination of synthetic life forms and organic life forms. Anyway, it was an interesting book called The State of the Art. It contained some of his short stories and a slightly longer novel, which I think is actually called The State of the Art, where members of this culture are coming to Earth and they're kind of assessing it and basically learning about it and seeing whether it would fit into the culture in some way and whether they would have to interject and kind of possibly influence the direction of the human culture. But one thing I thought that was really interesting, something that happens in that story, is that these people that have come to kind of mingle with humanity, disguised as humans, they kind of all congregate on their starship, which is hidden somewhere above the Earth. And they enjoy such novel things. Like, I think there was something about making a steak out of grown cells from one of the leaders of North Korea. And like, kind of as they're discussing things, they're enjoying that and like taking some cutlery from some ancient places that's been cleaned up and kind of using that. Not in like an insulting way, but just in a, we're so advanced and we haven't let go of like our kind of childish curiosity. So we're just indulging in novel things. And I do kind of feel like possibly humanity might be kind of leading in that direction, that as we're having everything accessible to us, novelty will never go away. Just like the curiosity of the unknown. And I think and I hope that possibly the artists of today may still have something to give to consumers in the future along the lines of that type of novelty, even if their jobs are taken away by kind of new emerging technological tools like all of these AI developments. All right, maybe a bit of a strange video, but thanks for watching, everyone, or listening. If you made it to the end, put a robot emoji in the comments so I can see who you are. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time.